Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Sunday evening to you all. Hope you guys have had a great day and have had a great weekend out there. Guys, I've managed to start this video over about 15, 20, 25 times now. I just cannot get my act together. So please bear with me as I make my way through this video to try to provide you guys a clear message. But in this evening's video, we are going to discuss the tropics, and really that is all we're going to talk about in this video. There's an area we need to watch out for. When I say watch out, it's not really any kind of threat to the U.S. right now unless something big changes, which there's always that possibility. But right now there's a 20% chance of tropical development in the Southwest Caribbean. We're going to talk about some factors that could promote or prevent development in this video and really just talk about everything as a whole. So if you guys have not subscribed, please consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. Growth has been very slow, which is totally cool, guys. I just appreciate people who continue to tune in regardless of whether it's affecting your exact location or not. It really does mean a lot. If you guys have a Facebook and you're relatively active on it, definitely hit the Facebook icon there and give me a like on my Facebook page. It's a big goal of mine to hit 10,000 likes by the end of 2022. I understand that, if weather's not really very active, people aren't going to interact with weather stuff much. But it's a great way to interact with what I do, especially when things really pick up, which they will. It's inevitable. The weather is going to always do something crazy, right? So hope you guys are staying cool out there. It's been very hot. It's been very miserable for a lot of people. I already can't wait till the winter months and fall months. I really can't. That's all I think about this time of year. I hate the summer. I do not like it. I know hate is a very strong word, but I'm just not a big fan of summer. I'm really not. But if you guys got anything that I can pray about, please put in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and it gives everybody else an opportunity to do so too. So let's definitely do that and glorify God doing it. So right now, there is a 20% chance in this yellow area of a tropical development into maybe some kind of depression or something, a named storm. It's not likely, but anything can happen. But I'll talk to you why I'll give you your reasons why it's probably not likely here as we work our way through this video. But in this area of the Western and Southwestern Caribbean, we need to watch out for development. So right now, this is within 5 days, but really the 48-hour to 72-hour time frame within this range is really the time frame we need to watch out for. This will probably tell it all with this system as far as where it's going to head and how strong it can possibly get. Really, the big-time factor in strengthening with this really is land interaction. It's going to be all up against Central America, and obviously tropical systems do not like land. So we look at this and see what's going on. This is satellite visibility, right? The sun's beginning to set over areas. If the further out east you go into the Atlantic, the sun's starting to set. So that's why this video is starting to dim a little bit. But what you got going on here? Down here is the monsoon trough. It's basically, think of this as just a constant area of constant development, really close and really deep down the tropics. Along it, you have trade winds. So normally when you have strong trade winds, just think of that as shear. We've talked about this before. Tropical systems do not like shear. But you have this tropical wave that has kind of developed and made its way across the Caribbean, and it's entering the Caribbean. And as it's doing so, there is something called a ULAC, which is basically upper level anticyclone, which in general, tropical systems spin like this. Well, not in general. In the northern hemisphere, they do. They all spin like this. 200 millibars up, or very high up in the atmosphere, over tens of thousands of feet up in the atmosphere, 30,000 feet, for example. You have winds moving wind direction moving at this direction. So basically the tropical development is moving like this. You're trying to get a spin like this. And I'm really speaking of this if this was a hurricane, for example. So it's circulating like this, but way up in the atmosphere, you have winds moving like this. And you would think, well, heck, wouldn't that disrupt circulation? Well, these winds moving like this are well above the winds moving like this. And this actually helps to ventilate these tropical systems, and then helps for air to rise, which cause stronger updrafts, and in general, a tropical system can strengthen. I know I'm very sloppy really describing this, but having an example of this will really help me describe this a lot better. But in general, you're going to have that over this region. So that is a factor that is promoting development, a ULAC, which is basically an act of ventilation over this tropical system. One big thing that's preventing this from developing is we're probably going to get some kind of vorticity, which is basically a spin, very small spin. But it's going to be so rubbed up against land right here that it's likely going to interact with land, therefore prevent any kind of significant development. And the reason why it's not really going to try to nudge north is really in the short term it can't get its act together. If it could, that means that, heck, it might have an outside chance to kind of crash right into the ridging that's building over the eastern U.S. But in general, I don't think that it would make it into the Gulf of Mexico anyways, because eventually it would probably still get smashed and moved west with the flow around the ridging of high pressure. But in general, it's very interesting to watch. We're early in the tropical season right now, but it's going to be fascinating to see what develops right into here, if anything that can really get going here in the Western Caribbean. But the sea surface temperatures in general are supportive of tropical development. Rapid intensification, probably not. But in the Caribbean, you got 29, 28 degrees Celsius, which in general is the low to mid 80s in Fahrenheit. That supports tropical and maintains tropical development in this region. So we're not worried about that the tropical system isn't worried about that. Because that does support tropical development. Now, if we look at the latest GFS, and in general, we can probably go on and switch to the 18Z because I think we can. So us out to 192 hours out. We can really try to figure out what happens here. And we're getting going here in time. And the latest GFS pops a low pressure deep, I mean way deep down here in the Southwest Caribbean. And a low pressure begins to develop. If the GFS is right, heck, this could potentially be Tropical Storm Bonnie. Once you start to get below 1,000 millibar low pressure, you start to can guess that, hey, this could be a tropical storm. You also got to watch this little piece of energy right here. Is basically a mesoscale convective system. Basically, a cluster of storms gets knocked off into the North Atlantic and can potentially get some tropical characteristics with it. And who knows, that can develop into something. It's just a trend we need to watch. But we keep this going here in time. The GFS has whatever this is moving a little bit further north in the Caribbean and the Western Caribbean, and then has this as an all-out tropical storm as we get into this coming weekend. Makes landfall as a hurricane in the Yucatan, crosses the Yucatan, gets into the Bay of Campeche, would probably try to strengthen again, and this is as far out as it goes, and this is about 8 to 9 days out, where you still probably have a strong tropical storm or weak Category 1 hurricane in the Bay of Campeche. But of course, you look at the European, totally different. Latest European just shows really a blob of moisture down here, but it does pop off a low pressure here, and it does. If we look at the Vort map here at the 850s, which is in the low levels of the atmosphere, I'll show you here in a second, it does pop off a vorticity here, which in general shows us that we probably have some kind of development trying to form here in the Southwest Caribbean. But in general, you don't really see much of anything going on until about Wednesday or Thursday, where you really start to see, well, on Tropical Tidbits, it pops off an L, which is our low pressure. And what does it do? It just kind of meanders here, moves over Central America, never can really get going. But in general, the European, I wouldn't say has trended towards the GFS, but it's trended to a more scenario like the GFS. Of course, the GFS is always going to be on its own. It's always going to be much more aggressive. But the European is starting to like the idea of something forming. And I honestly think, when I say forming, just basically a disturbance down here. And then I think that's really why the National Hurricane Center pulled the trigger on an area of interest being discussed here. But I know this is going to be probably a little bit more confusing for the people tuning in. But in general, we look here. These are basically 850 millibar vortices. So we really can look at this and really tell where there's a spin in the atmosphere in general. And the European does this as we're getting into about midweek. You see this area down here. There's a little bit of a Vort max showing up here. And in general, that tells us that something is trying to develop here. That doesn't mean that something has developed, but something is trying. There's a spin down here. Think of it as this in the Southwest Caribbean. As we get into Friday, this tries to move over Central America, then move back over the Western Caribbean, move back over the Yucatan, then get into the Bay of Campeche, and then will develop into some warm waters into the bay, but then gets pushed back down, and the flow gets pushed right back into Mexico due to this ridging of high pressure, likely over areas of the central and eastern U.S. So it's very interesting to watch. Now that let's get this off the screen. Now that ULAC that I just mentioned, that anticyclonic flow in general is what I'm trying to say. Anticyclone, whatever, it acts as a ventilation to the storm. We can really give you a good example of this here. And this is the, what is this? This is the European. And in general, we'll get this going. Now, you see these areas in blue right here. Think of this as wind shear. It's not super strong wind shear, but this is wind shear. The darker blues you get, the more stronger wind shear. And then obviously once you get into the greens and yellows, you start pushing 60 to 70, 80 knots of wind shear in the upper levels in the atmosphere. And really not, I'm talking about 30,000 feet up in the air or more. This is where that wind shear can occur. So you're getting going here in time. Here it goes. You have a low pressure popping off here, but look, you got no wind shear near the circulation. You got likely, once you get here in time, you actually have a flow moving in the opposite direction way above the primary circulation. So in general, you see this right here. You see these wind streams moving in this direction, these arrows moving like this. In general, you see this swirl. This swirl is moving like this. Tropical systems move like this. So this is basically that anticyclonic flow right over whatever, I wouldn't say right over, but it's around whatever circulation is trying to form here in the Western Caribbean. So you do have some kind of ventilation, and therefore, if this thing, let's say, was maybe in this region right here, it would have more of a higher chance to develop. So, but I think ridging in the central and eastern part of the U.S. is really going to prevent this from moving too far north, but we'll have to watch this. This is not the best example of basically of a ULAC, but I can show y'all some much better examples when we have a big time hurricane to talk about. It's kind of hard to provide a really good example of this until we get into the heart of hurricane season and actually have a hurricane that's taking advantage of one of these. But just think of this as just a flow in an opposite direction, and it helps to really clear out the air in the center of whatever circulation we're dealing with, and it provides a rising of air. It allows for more air to rise, therefore promotes updrafts from development and promotes strengthening. So moving forward here, and we're looking at the GFS, and let's go on and switch this to the 18Z to get the latest updated information. We're starting in about this coming Wednesday morning. Low pressure develops, but you see this red up here, especially the dark reds. This is ridging into the U.S., into the Gulf of Mexico. This will probably prevent it from moving north, but the GFS is by far the most northern scenario, and gives you an idea that, hey, if this gains a lot of strength right into this region, like the GFS likes the idea of, this will probably move more north. But the GFS is always going to be an outliner in this kind of setup, especially in the Caribbean, where it has a convective feedback issue and basically likes to show more stronger convection than what is actually happening. But we'll have to watch this. This shows a pretty decent hurricane moving into the eastern shores of Mexico. So we need to watch this for sure. But in general, we look at the ensembles and what could potentially unfold. The latest GFS ensembles from 12Z shows that strong signal. And in general, you can tell the stronger storms want to try to move a little bit further north. But the reason you're seeing such a stout signal here is because you're seeing more stronger storms in this region. Really, you don't even see a whole lot of low pressures getting into the Gulf of Mexico. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of several ensemble runs that are put together to create a mean. But in general, this is something on Tropical Tidbits that really shows all the potential low pressures and where they could potentially be, even though we're only going to be talking about one. It's what we call the ensemble. But in general, there's a signal right into here that we can have some tropical development. The EPS ensembles, here we go, shows a signal now also, but it's much more south and up against Central America and doesn't show it near as far north or strong as the GEFS ensemble. So it's something we need to just pay attention to, and certainly nothing to worry about. But that's pretty much a tropical update. Sorry if it came out sloppy. it seems like every time the weather slows back down, my delivery gets a little bit more sloppy. It's like I really need something good to latch onto or talk about for me to deliver a really clear message. But I hope this made sense for you guys. And if you got any questions or comments, like I said, now is a great time to do it because it's slow and I can get as detailed as possible with you guys. So thank y'all for tuning in. Hope you guys have had a great weekend. I'll be with y'all in the morning and we'll talk about what's going to happen tomorrow. God bless.